we can see the President of the United States emerging for the first time from Air Force One and descending those steps himself onto the tarmac at the airport in Tel Aviv.
He is greeting the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, embracing Benjamin Netanyahu there on the tarmac of Tel Aviv airport, making some introductory remarks, surrounded by a throng of reporters, dignitaries and indeed the Secret Service as well, making polite conversation and no doubt words of consolation there on the tarmac of Tel Aviv airport, greeting with affection the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu there.
Yeah, and President Biden having a vast career experience of international relations. He'll be all too aware of the importance of recognising the hurt and pain of those Hamas atrocities, whilst also asking those difficult questions surrounding the chaos and confusion in relation to that hospital strike, which could prove a turning point in this Israel-Gaza conflict.
Indeed, it has been reported that this trip, this visit by President Biden was conditional on certain concessions from Israel towards the people of Gaza. Things like humanitarian aid corridors, safe areas for civilians, and indeed potentially a delay to this sweeping ground invasion of Gaza that had been expected. Could Joe Biden be the person to cool down the temperature here in the Middle East over the next 24 hours, or might it all be too late? A lot is riding on this particular extraordinary presidential visit.
Yeah, extraordinary is the word, and security incredibly tight. We're looking at pictures of lots of his special Secret Service there surrounding his vehicle. He will then travel in a motorcade before holding meetings with Benjamin Netanyahu, who we saw greeting him there. And they are both today expected to make joint statements. We know that there are historic tensions between the two leaders. There have been differences of opinion over the years, and they will be seeking to establish common ties. The United States, of course, huge allies to Israel and have pledged their unequivocal support to the Israeli state, but it is not without conditions. The President of the United States will be wanting something in return for this visit. He will be putting pressure on Israel to open some sort of humanitarian corridor, or at least to ease the siege on the Strip, allowing water, electricity and medicine to flow back into the region. But this trip significantly reduced with, as we've been reporting this morning, the second half of those meetings having been cancelled dramatically just before the president left the White House last night on this already announced visit to the Middle East.
Well, let's bring in now our man on the ground. Charlie Peters has been following developments in Israel. He is in Tel Aviv, the same city where, of course, the United States president has just touched down. And Charlie, what can we expect from the president's visit today?
Well, he is going to try and continue that urgent humanitarian shopping list that Antony Blinken, the Secretary of State, arrived with last week, but failed to check out. In particular, the establishment of those humanitarian safe zones in the south of the Gaza Strip, after the IDF ordered some 1.1 million people to head from North Gaza to the south ahead of that likely planned ground invasion, and also the increased bombardment from air, sea and land, artillery and airstrikes continuing to hit Hamas military capabilities, the IDF say, in the area. They will also want to secure the flow of humanitarian aid from the Egyptian side into Gaza through that Rafah border crossing, which has remained closed. There have now been 3 occasions in the last 4 days where the Americans have said that they believe the Rafah crossing will open imminently, and those hopes have been dashed as the situation in the south of Gaza increasingly becomes untenable for the people there. They have also, like the Britons, urged people to move into the Rafah crossing area so that if it does open, foreign nationals are able to exit that war zone. And there have been airstrikes in the south as well. The Hamas-run health ministry in the Gaza Strip claiming that 49 people were killed in an airstrike in Yunus Khan 2 days ago. But this visit comes also at an urgent time for Israel as it attempts to convince the world of its side of what happened last night in the north with that explosion at a hospital, the Baptist Christian Hospital in Gaza City. This morning, the IDF has released what it says is compelling signals and imagery intelligence of the situation last night. They also say that some 450 rockets have failed to clear the Gaza Strip after they've been launched by the Hamas terror group and other associated groups inside the Gaza Strip. So they're trying to paint a picture of pattern analysis leading to this crisis last night. And they've also shown us in the imagery intelligence that they've released this morning the differences between the craters that you'd usually anticipate with an IDF strike, such as the 1,000-pound bombs or the JDAM missiles used by the IDF and allies in the region, and what remains of that car park next to the hospital this morning, where there was a significant blast. There are also some other claims in Tel Aviv this morning from analysts and observers who say that munitions could have been stored at the hospital, as is within the tactics and procedures of Hamas. And that conversation continuing there as they seek to understand that situation as regional partners, particularly on the Arab side, seek to push away from the Israelis and the Americans at this urgent turning point in the diplomatic relations.
And Charlie, stay with us. I just want to bring our viewers with us as well as that motorcade gets underway. The reason perhaps for some of that delay once the President of the United States got into the vehicle is to do with the fact that yesterday the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz's plane had to be evacuated at Israel's Ben Gurion airport, and that was due to rocket attacks. Those flying with the Chancellor were able to board the plane a few minutes later, as well as the Chancellor, but security incredibly tight. Nobody can afford for this to go wrong. We see the trouble and the chaos that has been caused, not only, of course, to human life and civilians with this hospital strike, but also in terms of the optics and the actual physical safety of international leaders.
Indeed, and we're seeing a seemingly endless stream of cars there, not just the President of the United States, but many of his advisors, security services, and others accompanying him on this trip today. Charlie, I suppose the number one topic of conversation and concern will be what really happened overnight at this hospital in Gaza. The IDF this morning saying that it has been the Palestinian Authorities trying to hide what really happened, that Hamas is really behind this perhaps malfunction that led to the dramatic scenes we saw at that hospital. Might we be hearing words from the United States on this today?
This is, I think, what the Israeli side is urgently keen to see. They want third-party support for their intelligence claims this morning. Of course, both sides making claims about the situation, those in the Gaza Strip and those in Tel Aviv urgently putting forward their side of the story. But this morning, the evidence provided by Hamas has been limited, whereas the IDF has put forward compelling but by no means conclusive evidence about what they say was a misfired rocket by the Palestinian Islamic Jihad group. They've shown footage of the launch from the Gaza Strip. We were in Tel Aviv walking around reporting when that barrage of rockets was fired towards us. And as you said, the German Chancellor taking shelter at that same time. It was a significant barrage. And the IDF said this morning that some 450 rockets have landed short, some of them within the Gaza Strip, since the start of this war. On the first day, they fired 4,500 rockets into Israel. So there have been significant efforts to launch rockets into this country, and not all of them work. They are a non-state hostile actor. Their tactics and procedures are not to the same level of a conventional military, and we do know that they use homemade explosive devices, and there are also claims made by the Israelis that they use water pipes to develop their rockets and the launch systems that they use. So the opportunity for failure, for launch failure, for misfire, and also for rockets to break up in the air is relatively high when compared with conventional militaries in the region. But yes, there is now urgent conversation about the idea that the American side might come in and offer their own intelligence analysis of what happened last night as the IDF continues to release more information. They're very clearly trying everything they can to fight the narrative that was launched last night within moments of this appalling incident. Within just 15 minutes, the Palestinian Authority announced 3 days of mourning for what it described as a crime of genocide. Lebanon, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Egypt, Jordan, all of the Arab nations coming out within the first hour to condemn Israel for what had happened before, the Israelis say, information was released sufficiently. It took them 2 hours to respond to our press requests, and many other journalists obviously here urgently reaching out to the IDF last night, where they said that they did not do it. And then this morning, the more compelling intelligence evidence has been put forward. Compelling, but as we say, not conclusive. So the Israeli hope today will be that further insight, not just from the US, but hopefully they hope from other Western powers observing the situation. We do have British spy planes, let's not forget, flying over this coast, observing the situation. Those maritime patrol aircraft deployed by Rishi Sunak a week ago, they have been seen, well, not seen, we know that they are above this coastline, observing the Gaza Strip. So there is significant imagery and signals intelligence being gathered in the Gaza Strip, and there are now hopes, of course, that more information will come out to establish once and for all what happened at that hospital last night. There are also questions about the death toll. The Hamas-run health ministry saying it's well over 500, but of course no official confirmation on that yet, though the scene does look devastating.